Speaking moistly.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Speaking Moistly, our
Keep
usual
2
Tuesday
meters apart.
afternoon edition
Speaking
on
moistly.
Friday. With me, as usual, Greg, the better host of Speaking
Hi.
Moistly.
Oh, that's my phone. What? Hello, Trudeau. Is
Great
that
timing.
you?
It's perfect.
Yeah. I can't talk right now. No, your face looks great like that. Yeah, more black shoe polish.
He's back in Canada. He's got the mask on now. They were in Ukraine, obviously, because I mean, where else would the prime minister, the deputy prime minister, finance minister, and Melanie Jolie be?
Well, he wanted to get.
He wasn't there. Was there a U2 concert?
Trudeau wanted to get Bono's autograph. That's why he was
Obviously.
there.
He's
That's
like, holy smoke, I can't believe I missed it again. It's like poker. So
the mask thing is very insulting, though.
The mask, like him wearing mask. There's a picture of Justin Trudeau wearing a mask in the House of Commons yesterday, whereas 2 days ago he was hanging out with Zelensky and crew, maskless.
I mean, it's everything. I would say everything that we see in the news has like a double insult to it, because it's like, one, okay, this guy thinks I'm stupid, and then also, does everyone else not see how stupid this is? Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like it's just offensive. It's just offensive that people don't see it for what it is. You know, how can you not see the hypocrisy?
No, people see it, but you have to understand that there's an undercurrent of threat. If you acknowledge how round the bend nuts this all is, right? Like we went from, what was the thing before Ukraine? Ukraine is a thing, and like just before Ukraine, there was a thing everybody was talking about, and like it was all in the
convoy.
Well, no, it was all in the profile pictures. Or it was all like it was all in the Twitter profiles, right? Like you've got the Ukrainian flag now, and you've got the jab, you're triple jabbed, Ukrainian flag.
Current thing.
What was the current thing before? Men can't have control over women's spaces, but men can be women. I don't know. There was a thing before Ukraine, and everybody was on board with it. And now it's just the groupthink and like the demanded. So there's an inherent risk, is what I'm trying to say, if going against that. If you go against that, people are going to be like, why aren't you wearing the ribbon?
Seinfeld reference. Very nice.
What?
Very nice. Why do you not want to wear the ribbon?
Yeah. That's it. That's what it is. And like, if you're like a tenured professor or something like that, you think to yourself, I'll just wear the freaking ribbon. I mean, what's the point? Why am I fighting this?
Yeah.
Which is terrible.
It's not just a ribbon, folks. It's a lot more than that.
Well, if you don't wear the ribbon, you're obviously an ideologically motivated violent extremist. Is the
an IMVE? That's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct.
That's where we're at. We talked about this on my show on Canada Poly. We talked about IMVE 6 months ago. I was like, there, because it was starting to show up in it was starting to show up in reference papers, thesis reference papers, and all sorts of the discussion between these top level people in Senate committee and stuff, or in House committees and things. They were talking about IMVE, and I was like, this is going to be a thing. This is going to pop in the news any day now, and now it's the new thing. And Justin Trudeau today came out and said to Jagmeet Singh, did you saw the Peterborough footage?
Yep.
That's like the burning of that thing that incited the Nazi, the Weimer. The burning of the something was the start of Nazi rule, basically. They were like, oh, see, this terrible thing happened, and now we have to take control. Like Jagmeet Singh being publicly yelled at is like, they're trying to equate that. Justin Trudeau is saying, oh, I'm sorry, my friend.
So, I mean, like when it comes to the IMVE, like the way I look at it is I look at it from like a very zoomed out perspective. And, you know, I don't have the stomach for this, but if you can find like websites that are essentially like the federal government's like think tank, and they kind of like, you know, they have a podcast where they kind of like, you know, troubleshoot ideas, and they have all these like intellects and academics writing about like domestic terrorism and white nationalism. And it's like, yeah, we want to make this the hot new thing when it comes to terrorism. And you know, you can even find certain academics who are like, hey, I initially used to focus on like Al-Qaeda, and I used to focus on ISIS, but then I was told living in Canada at a Canadian university that I should focus on white supremacist groups because like basically there's more money in it. Like that's where like the trends are going. And I think it's not about necessarily actually, hey, this is legitimate or that's legitimate. It's about creating as many little labels and many little, it's basically like, let's brainstorm, let's try a bunch of different things, let's throw it all at the wall, and let's see what will justify communist style censorship. Like that's basically what they're kind of going for. So IMVE, ideologically motivated violent extremism, that's just like another kind of thing that they've workshopped and that they're going to try to throw at the wall to try to make stick. Personally, I think it sucks. I think it's terrible. Like it's
made up.
And of course it's made up. And the trick that they're doing is so absurd. They're basically saying, like the way I discovered ideologically motivated violent extremism, I saw my mom for Mother's Day. She has a subscription to the Globe and Mail, and I opened up to the second page from like the May 7th edition or something, and the headline was something like it was
violence is in quotes.
CSIS warned officials of election violence, and violence is in quotes. And the director of CSIS basically says, an example of violent extremism was at the trucker convoy. And it's like, head of CSIS, do you have the intelligence? Do you have the intelligence? Do you have the information?
I was like, the head of our spy agency is totally talking
that
about
there was violence.
Yeah.
And what they do with this, what they're trying to do with this abbreviation, and why I think it's going to fail, is because you can't just accuse people of being a violent extremist. Like you can't just like do that. You know what I mean? Like they're throwing this word violent and extremist around, and it's like, guys, these were people who are fired from their jobs for not getting a specific injection. You can't just call them violent extremists now. Like you guys have lost it. You're not good at being tyrants. You're not. It used to be.
Okay. It used to be that if the public was doing that to a politician, the news would say this politician who has enacted these not popular policies is now dealing with the fallout from that. And here's what happened. And like these people were saying F you, Jagmeet, and like your POS and all sorts of stuff. And I don't condone them like being rude like that. I mean, there's probably a better way to address a politician if you disagree with them. But when you've been ignored for years, when every court case has failed, when the prime minister of the country is saying, how do we tolerate these people? And Jagmeet is propping them up. I can understand the frustration, right? Like I can totally understand it, right? I don't agree with how they went about it, but my goodness me, like at some point, what else are you going to do? And I talked about that. I talked about that on the show, how they're creating the situation where people are going to act out because there's no other way to get their grievances addressed. And that's not okay. And then they play the victim, and they're going to use it to just cracking down further to remove more rights and freedoms that they say. Well, and they're already proposing cracking down on protests against politicians. So if you're a politician, you're in a protected class like healthcare and nurses and things.
Yeah, I mean, any single person who opposes Trudeau, who is like, those protesters shouldn't have said the F word or shouldn't have. No,
missing the point.
Like you're totally missing the point. And here's the thing: what happened at the trucker convoy? You know what happened at the trucker convoy? We got to see just how absurd the Canadian establishment is. Because you know what the Canadian establishment did? The news media and the politicians, they did more investigation into protesters than the actual politicians and the actual policies. What does that tell you? We're being more critical. We're being more scathingly critique of the protesters than the people who are actually in charge of this country. It's totally absurd and backwards. And this is the exact same thing happening with Jagmeet Singh. I actually have a tweet of like Viva Fry where he's like, he does this weird, like I like Viva Fry. I like a lot of the stuff that he does, but sometimes his takes are like so they validate the liberal framework, which is only killing this country. And like he does this balancing act. He's like, oh, he called them a traitor. I don't approve of this. It's counterproductive. Is it counterproductive to see people screaming at this politician and like being so emboldened to be like, I am so upset with you that I'm even like using swear words. And so I quote retweeted Viva Fry saying, stop following the media's lead by critiquing anonymous citizens. Journalists, like citizens, are supposed to critique leaders and institutions. These citizens are mad. Why? The casual shaming of citizens who are at their wits' end is what's disgusting and counterproductive.
And if there
why are we like critiquing regular citizens who have clearly lost their mind for good reason? It's so backwards. And it's one thing for like, a typical liberal or obviously a typical journalist to have that perspective because it's literally their job. But when I see people who are like more conservative leaning saying this, and when I see people, obviously Jean Charest or whatever, like I'm not surprised by that because he's an establishment person, but
he's super conservative.
People who actually oppose the Trudeau regime need to understand this. Okay. We shouldn't be shaming citizens who are angry. Like this whole we need to be polite. And I made another kind of tweet that said, politeness and pragmatism is not going to defeat evil. On the contrary, politeness and pragmatism is like a tool that evil uses to pacify people.
Yeah. Well, and I saw an interesting like waves of fear. And I was saying at the end of my show that it's going to seem like the government is backed into a corner because they have to respond to a crisis, and then they incompetently respond to this crisis by limiting our freedoms. But really, the goal to everything is to limit the freedoms anyway, right? Like if they could do it without the crisis, they would, but they can't. So they use the crisis, but now they're using things like the
naughty words,
right? Some angry people who are yelling at Jagmeet Singh for as they see it doing harm to them to justify further crackdown. Like there isn't violent extremism happening. Well, now these naughty words are violent extremism. Well, no, it was words, right? Like I don't know. So
yeah, and it's the double standard is getting to the point where it's not just frustrating, not just hypocritical. It's getting dangerous. It's getting dangerous, and it's getting so horribly divisive and chaotic that it's hard to deal with. Like during the trucker convoy, there was like an attack on a pipeline operation, I think in Alberta, where people like were smashing windows.
There's millions of dollars,
property,
not one arrest.
And it's like barely even a mention in the news cycle either. Yep. And it's like, how about that for violent extremism?
Right.
Talk about that. Well, they would at least have more credibility going after right wingers if they actually went against people who are actually being violent and extreme. For example, there was also an example of Antifa, smashing windows not too long ago in Canada, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, in Quebec during May 2nd or something, May 2nd or May 9th.
And it's all of this actual violence gets a pass for some reason. And then when conservatives when conservatives are shouting at somebody, we act like it's like you said, like people in white hoods burning a cross on someone's lawn, and it's like, guys, this is not.
It's all meant to make people conform to the narrative. It's all meant to make people, to crush people into like conforming paste, right? Like they have to be the same.
Not only that. I think a lot of takes like this, it's a sign of like how desperate and scared the establishment is. It's like every journalist are like, you need to shame this. You need to, you
Andrew Coyne. Did you see?
Because what's happening, right? Regular people
are realizing that it's all
are getting angry.
Yeah, they're getting angry.
And they're showing up and they're letting you know that they're angry.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is like a huge problem for the Canadian establishment. We can't have people feeling emotions and getting angry and actually going to the people who are responsible and making them feel uncomfortable because they're starting to feel the heat. And they're like, oh my God, you're putting pressure on us establishment people. This is terrorism. It's
and it's their shield, impenetrable, right? Just like calling a left winger a racist.
I do want to mention while we're on this topic though, because we were talking about IMVE, this abbreviation they're trying to throw at the wall. Just to kind of go along with that, something that they already tried to throw at the wall is Diagolon and Jeremy McKenzie being like the leader of this accelerationist militia. And it wasn't sticking because it's totally absurd. And thankfully, by the grace of God and friggin' Jeremy's amazing resolve, he's been like continually to make content, and just his last stream from Wednesday, I highly recommend you go watch it. It's the Ragecast episode 233. He's lined up all of these clips from, I don't know what trial is going on or what hearing is going on, but essentially he gets the clips of the head of CSIS and the head of RCMP.
Oh, I saw when he was asking
just,
for people to send in the clips for it. And so,
yeah,
you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. And like the last like hour and a half of that stream, Jeremy just kind of goes off on these people so righteously, by the way, because they're talking about him. They're talking about his fan base for his podcast. And it's, yeah. And I guess it's just really great to see, you know, a veteran and a funny veteran and a great guy like Jeremy calling out the head of CSIS, calling out the RCMP for, just like, it's such a joke, man. Like this country is like, wow.
Well, one of the things I wanted to mention is when I was running in 2019, there was a couple of people who took me out for lunch just to chat with me, and they lived in China for a while, and they talked about the propaganda, how the propaganda has, like, Chinese propaganda has built-in controls. So like they build into their propaganda what somebody who is trying to tell somebody who lives there the truth would say. So like when the people start saying this, you'll know that they're telling you lies, right? And the way they're talking about like nonviolent extremism, or no, violent, whatever,
ideologically motivated,
the way they're talking about that, if you peel it back a little bit, they say right wing. I talked about this on my show earlier today as well, but right wing, alt-right, white supremacy, and there's one other thing that they said, but this is all grouped together now. And it's like like a soft, anything that sounds like it would fit into that category, even though there's no groups that are defined. Like it's not like the KKK and you can see them and they're burning crosses and stuff. There's no group or anything like that. Just this fuzzy picture. Anything that fits into that is already like Pierre Poilievre. They're trying to, I think that I've seen things that are saying that they're trying to do to him what they were doing to Bernier, trying to push him out. I don't know that they're going to let him win that leadership contest.
They're not going to do that. They're going to embrace Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah, you think he's going to win?
And then they're going to try to bring the conservatives further left. Yeah, because
right. I don't know.
I think that's the case because I think they know that like Trudeau has so many patches. They've tried to patch him up so many times that it's like, dude, this guy is barely like holding it together here.
I don't see that. I think he's, so like when I look at the House of Commons, I see the Liberals and the NDP together with the Greens have over 200 votes, and that's a strong majority, right? And that voting profile. Well, I'm just like, I don't see Trudeau having an issue with getting his ideologically motivated platform passed. I really don't. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that there's some kind of stopgap that that we don't see C11 fly through Parliament and then get approved in the Senate. I hope I'm wrong.
Embracing the media embracing Pierre Poilievre is not the same as how they embrace Trudeau, right? Like they have to keep the status quo going. So, you know, embracing Pierre Poilievre would basically just like not be calling him racist all the time. It would be kind of like, you know, it would still be like, yeah, we're being critical of this horrible conservative. But obviously it's not going to be anything like what they did to Bernier because they wanted to completely cancel Bernier and like wipe him off the face of the planet.
Right. But at the beginning, they covered him in a different way. So like what they did and the rationale for covering him at the beginning, the way they did. So like when he because
they wanted to splinter the conservatives at the beginning.
They wanted to give themselves credibility. They wanted to say, see, we're covering it fairly. And then flip. And then when people stop paying attention to those articles, they rewrite the article in the headline to mention white supremacy, et cetera, et cetera. And you Google my name to find that out, et cetera. You can, but it is a very planned out attack that I think we're seeing the beginning, and then there's like a pause, and then they start putting out stories that are to shape the narrative. I think there's a reason that the campaign, the CPC campaign, is till September as well, like for this reason, because people forget, right?
Yeah. Well, I think what you said earlier was very smart in terms of the fuzziness. You're talking about the fuzziness of the different terms. And I think it's really true. Like it's, you know, white supremacist is basically, they've basically made it a dog whistle to mean like average conservative, you know, like that's pretty well what like, and
Well,
it's all
they've
just
got us
becoming
so
a big basket of like deplorable
deplorables.
terms,
They've got us so
like
well
what's the
trained.
difference? You know, what's
Yeah,
the difference between any of them?
if you like, you are so, I am so well trained, and it's partially because, you know, we're both in media and stuff, but I think everyday people are well trained enough as well to, you and I articulate it, other people keep it in their heads and say it to themselves. But it's like, we say to ourselves, oh, you know, white supremacy, like this is, we're getting into white supremacy territory. Like I'll joke around with my friends, like, oh, here's another white supremacist thought, you know, like whatever. And so you calling it a dog whistle, yeah, I agree, but I think it's also like encouraged to view the world in that lens, and that's never been the, and I don't even think that, like, what the accusation of white supremacy that they're throwing does not even have anything to do with like real white supremacists. It has nothing to do with it. It's 100% a smear to
Right.
catch-all smear.
Yeah, and the scary part is that, you know, what kids are being taught in school, and also how centrists and liberals are being coached is to actually believe it, and believe that it's like, that it's real, and it's like, oh yeah, these people criticizing immigration policy, they're actually white supremacists. And you know, that's like really deeply ingrained, unfortunately, into like a lot of indoctrinated people. Yep. Where they have this knee-jerk reaction, well, I would never side with the racists. And it's like, dude, I've been on the right wing for like years now, and I haven't really met any genuinely, you know, racist.
And that's what I mean by like you know, that's what I was trying to articulate, I guess, by preloaded. Like as soon as you start talking about anything in that realm, somebody who's been effectively exposed to these programs will respond just the way you did. Oh, I don't deal with the racist. And it's like, well, hold on a second. The ideas that are being shared here are fundamentally not racist ideas at all. They're freedom ideas, etc. But like the rhetoric and the amount of money and momentum that's going into all this, I don't know. I don't even know if being aware that it's happening for like at a societal level would be enough to stop it at this point, because it just seems like it's got a life of its own, right? It's just like, it's like a wind up car. Those wheels are just going to go, right? Like, so maybe we just pick the car up, right?
Well, I mean, the getting out there in the streets and like, you know, yelling at Jagmeet Singh, like that does have an impact. Like the trucker cowboy, that did have an impact.
They're going to invoke the Emergencies Act, man. Did you hear them? They swore at Jagmeet Singh. Yikes.
Yeah.
Time for emergency. I mean, it's an emergency right now.
That's right.
This is an emergency. I'm like heart palpitations right now.
It's such a perversion though. Like back to what I was saying before. It's like, you know, why is any journalist, is any news outlet going to ask, why are these people so angry at him?
No.
The
answer to that question is,
right.
The answer to that question is, that's white supremacy, my friend.
Yeah. Questions are the new sign of
what did they, what was the mantra in 1984? Something leads to something. Oh, I'm gonna have to look it up. There's some kind of,
freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength.
Right. Questioning is white supremacy. Right. Any questions?
War is peace.
War is peace. Right. Okay. Yeah. So it's all
inverted. Ignorance is strength.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Right. We've got to go to this preventative war. We have to lock up all the white supremacists in concentration gulag camp, COVID hotel, because they might get sick, and we don't want them getting sick. They also happen to be all unvaccinated. That's right. That's right. And for our viewers, don't commit any wrong thing and do not consume any misinformation. So please, Big Brother loves you. Please delete this YouTube video when you're finished watching it. All right. And I've got to go pick up my kids. So I guess we'll end it there. Lovely speaking with you as usual, sir. Where can they find you? Find me on my YouTube channel, Greg Wycliffe. I also have an Instagram, Greg Wycliffe, one word. And I'm on Twitter and TikTok at GDUB. Thanks, Mark. Nice. And if you look for me, the Canadian government will add your name to a list. So thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.